All right, you're watching the Power Hour. I'm your host, DJ Larry Jones, and today we'll be discussing an important health issue that affects millions of people around the world, and that's heart disease. Joining us today to help shed some light and educate us on this topic is a highly qualified and experienced nurse practitioner, Hannah Mitchell. Hannah, how are you?
Hi, thank you. I am well. Thanks for allowing me to be on your show today. I know you share so many wellness advice on your podcast, and so I'm happy to be part of that conversation today.
Well, I'm happy to have you on the show today because it's a very important topic. But before we get into that, I want to kind of get into your backstory. What inspired you to become a health and wellness coach?
So, as you know, I've been a nurse practitioner for nearly a decade, and I've worked in cardiology for the majority of that time. And I worked in the hospital where I was seeing, patients come in with emergencies, and we're having to work quickly to take care of them. But then also in the clinic setting where I would see them after their devastating event and trying to get them back to wellness. And I had this one particular patient who he was 36 or so. He had had a heart attack, and I was seeing him in clinic, and the heart attack had caused ischemic cardiomyopathy. This is where part of your heart muscle dies during a heart attack. And so therefore the heart does not beat effectively anymore. So the heart should beat nice and strong. But if part of your heart muscle has died, then it beats like this. It's not really squeezing very hard. It should be squeezing like this, but now it's not really pumping very well. And that leads to what we know as congestive heart failure. The fluid doesn't pump through the heart appropriately. It backs up into like the lungs where you're not able to breathe, and other areas of the body. So I was seeing this guy routinely for this problem. And every time he showed up to clinic, he would have this Route 44 Slurpee, a big bag of chips. And this was not the single serving size of chips. This was the family size of chips that he was eating. And his blood sugar was 600 every single time. And for reference, blood sugar levels should be like 100. And his blood pressure was just sky high. And it just broke my heart to see someone destroying their life. I'm seeing it right in front of myself. And, I had to be straight with him. I had to say, look, guy, like this is killing you. You are going to have to make a change. I said, you will become immobile. Your heart will make it where you're not able to be active anymore. Your diabetes will cause you to have a leg amputation before you're 50. And he was like, this was all new to him. He had never heard any of these things before. He had no clue that him eating poorly or, not taking his medicines routinely was destroying his life. And he was so grateful for me to just be straight with him and tell him look, this is not good. He had no clue that you couldn't buy a bag of chips and eat it every day. He didn't realize. And so right then I was like, this is a problem. People do not realize that they can control their health. And so that's when I started my health coaching company, because I really want to get the word out there. I really want to be able to support people on a one-on-one basis to really guide them through the lifestyle changes they need. Because as you know, changing your lifestyle is not an easy task at all.
It's not.
So I think by being a health coach and having my knowledge of working in cardiology for years has really helped me help individuals achieve their goals.
Right. Now, when we talk about heart disease, we know it's preventable, right? But is it
A large
reversible?
portion,
A
yes.
large
So,
portion, yeah.
yes. So probably about 80% of heart disease is preventable with the right lifestyle. So, that's going to be nutrition, physical activity, sleep, stress management, all of those things. But heart disease is also reversible. And that's what's extremely important for people who's already been diagnosed with heart disease. That's not a death sentence. You can improve your heart health even when you think you're at your lowest point. And so if you've been diagnosed with a heart attack or high blood pressure, high cholesterol, don't give up. Don't think that that's the end for you, because we can dig out of that hole. I know I have helped so many people come off of blood pressure medicine, off of cholesterol medicine, and they're even congestive heart failure. There's been many people who's had a heart attack, had congestive heart failure, and are living a normal life, are out playing pickleball several times a week. And that's just a true testament to their hard work in improving their lifestyle.
All right. Now, what's the first steps in kickstarting your heart health and getting back to where you should be?
So the first thing that anyone needs to do is be aware. You need to start paying attention. What am I eating and why am I eating it? Am I eating it because I'm hungry? Am I eating it to nourish my body? Am I bored? Why am I eating as often as I'm eating? Do I need to eat that large of a portion, or am I full before I actually finish my plate? So being aware of the nutrition aspect, but then also activity. Start getting up and moving once an hour. Set a notification on your phone. So many of us work from home or on the computer, and before we know it, 5 hours have passed and we haven't even stood up. And so getting up every hour is also extremely important, and just being aware. Have I moved recently? What am I eating? And then, I think once people are aware of what they're doing and why they're doing it, then they can make that step to change and improve.
Yeah. And the biggest thing is change your diet. What I did was I took sugar out of my diet. And when I did that, I noticed a big change. So I did holistically as well as conventional medicine, and it got me back on track. So it does work. The diet does work. I want to talk about, as a nurse practitioner, what are some common risk factors of heart disease that you have observed in your patients?
So first and foremost, genetics plays a part in that. And I just want to get out there that that's the one thing that we can't control.
Right.
So we don't need to stress about it or worry about that factor that we can't change. So then we can shift to, okay, what are the risk factors that we actually can make a difference in? And those risk factors are high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, and obesity or even overweight. So you may not consider yourself obese, but even what we've noticed, if you are overweight, that can also play a role in increasing your risk for heart disease. And the other thing that's important to note is tobacco use. Tobacco use definitely increases your risk significantly for heart disease. So if you don't smoke, don't start. And if you are smoking, definitely consider and work towards a goal of stopping.
Exactly, because I was a smoker during my situation. And
I think, with tobacco use, I am seeing a significant decrease in patients and clients that smoke. I think the word is out that, smoking is not good for your lungs, not good for your heart, not good for your blood vessels. So a lot more people are aware and less people are picking up that habit. But there's still a population that, started when they were very young. And it's a tough habit to beat. But I think with the right support and friends, family, medical specialist, that it is possible to stop smoking.
You're right. I don't see as many smokers as we used to see back in the day. I just don't see them. You used to see them outside smoking here and there. You don't see that many. I mean, I guess now they moved to vaping, right?
Yes.
Now, is vaping
which is a whole other set of problems. It is still not recommended to vape, but if it is a means to an end, then that's reasonable to consider. But it's still not a healthy option.
Right. Now, high blood pressure is also known as the silent killer. Why does it have that name?
So a lot of people are very unaware that they have high blood pressure. It doesn't always cause symptoms. And so that is why it's considered the silent killer. A lot of people don't realize they have high blood pressure until they, maybe have a heart attack or some big event or a stroke. And then they realize that their blood pressure is very high. Now, once people are diagnosed with high blood pressure, they start picking up on maybe some symptoms they may have. It can cause fatigue or headaches or just not feeling 100%. And so there are some symptoms that can be associated with high blood pressure or hypertension, but oftentimes they go unnoticed. And we're noticing people have high blood pressure younger and younger now. And so oftentimes young people, whether they're teenagers or young 20s or even early 30s, they don't think or know they have medical issues. And so they're not going to the doctor for their routine checkups because they feel okay. And oftentimes these people will go years without treating or being diagnosed with high blood pressure. And high blood pressure has some very devastating long-term effects on the heart and blood vessels. If you have untreated high blood pressure for years and years, it will structurally change how the heart pumps. It changes the muscle and makes the heart muscle very stiff. And so the heart's not pumping as effectively. And that's one thing that a lot of people do not realize is, hey, if I'm not monitoring my blood pressure, if I don't realize that I have a problem, it can lead to problems down the road.
Oh yeah, and one thing leads to another. This happens. It's like a domino effect. Once one thing goes wrong and it goes unchecked, then it affects other things going on down the line. Now, is there a difference between heart failure and heart attack? If so, what's the difference?
Yeah, so a heart attack is basically where there is a blockage in the heart arteries, so the arteries feeding the heart muscle. And so if you have a blockage in one of those arteries, your muscle is not getting blood flow. And that is what we call a heart attack, is when heart muscle dies. That's a heart attack. And so the whole treatment plan for a heart attack is, let's open up that blood vessel to get better blood flow to that muscle, so it's salvageable. And so that is what a heart attack is. Heart failure, also some people call congestive heart failure, is where your heart muscle doesn't pump effectively. So it can be because your heart muscle is stretched out too big, like a balloon. And so it's stretched out. And so when it tries to pump, it can't pump like it should. It pumps like this. It's just not. And the other type of congestive heart failure, there's a couple types, is when your heart muscle is too stiff. And that's the type of heart failure that is caused by years of untreated hypertension. And so heart attack can lead to congestive heart failure. High blood pressure can lead to congestive heart failure, and several other things. But that's the big differences between a heart attack and heart failure.
Okay. Now, when we go to the hospital, we get placed on these medications. Eventually, there's long-term effects that comes with taking this medication, right? And sometimes you hear the doctor say, "Well, you're going to have to be on this for the rest of your life." But in my case, that wasn't so. Now, I'm not saying that the doctor's wrong. I mean, obviously, you go to the hospital, you do what you have to do. But self-care and the will to want to get better. What I done, like you and I talked earlier, I went holistically as well as conventional medicine. But I think the ultimate choice is yours. How bad do you want to get better? If you want to live, you do whatever it takes. You listen to the doctor and you'll do your own research, and no one knows your body better than you do. So you know what you're feeling, right? Let's talk about medications. When you get on these medications, there's side effects to them. You'll hear something like, okay, you'll take this and you may have seizures or whatever the case is. Should we rely totally on medication, in your opinion?
So the goal is to less is more always when it comes to medications. And a lot of healthcare professionals feel the same way. For your first point, when physicians say this is going to be a lifelong medication, they're often taking into account where someone started, their current lifestyle, and if they continue that lifestyle, it will be lifelong medication. Right. But there is that caveat where people can heal themselves holistically, and that is the goal for all of us. That's where we want to get. But you also have to be very methodical about coming off of medication that's potentially life-saving for you. We don't like medication because of all the side effects. So if we can get you off of medication, that's what I want to do. But we have to be safe with it too.
Right.
And so I think a lot of times when someone comes out of the hospital, they are on a lot of medications. Yeah. And when I see people in follow-ups, educating them on, hey, if you do X, Y, and Z, if you eliminate, reduce your sodium intake to less than 2,000 milligrams, you can come off of that blood pressure medicine. Right. And that's where routine follow-ups are important to kind of help and judge, when you can come off of medications. But there's no reason why you couldn't come off of blood pressure medicine. You couldn't come off of cholesterol medicine. You couldn't cure your diabetes with diet and exercise. It's very possible and very doable. And I see many people very successful at doing that as well.
Right. So if you're watching this, whoever's watching this, make sure you consult with your physician. Don't listen to me and say, well, he did it, I'm just going to. No, you have to, consult with your physician. Now, in closing, let's talk preventative measures. What can we do to prevent this from happening to us? I mean, obviously eating right. What are some bullet points you can give us?
So in regards to nutrition, I think if you can keep in your mind, if it's grown in the ground, if it was plant-based nutrition is always superior to anything else, especially for heart health. So if you can eat real food and just try to get the majority of your nutrition from real food, that's huge. That is going to make a big difference in reducing your risk of heart disease. Avoiding those packaged foods, that's going to be all processed foods. One thing I like to tell clients is when you're in a grocery store, if you just stick to the outside of the grocery store, that is all your real food. That's where your produce is, your meats or dairy or whatever. The middle section is all of your packaged processed foods. And so try not to go in the middle section of the store is the bottom line. And if you can successfully do that, you're already steps ahead on preventing heart disease.
Right.
The other thing in regards, so nutrition is a core pillar of preventing heart disease. The next one is physical activity. And this can look different for everybody. The American Heart Association does give specific guidelines for physical activity. And their recommendation is 150 minutes of aerobic exercise. So like walking, swimming, biking a week. So that kind of is like 30 minutes 5 times a week is the recommendation. There's a lot of people that I work with that is an impossible task. That sounds like climbing Mount Everest. And that's okay. If you're not there yet, don't let that discourage you. So we start small. If we just need to walk to the mailbox, twice a day, let's do that. And we build up. Before you know it, you'll be able to walk around the block. And so just judging where you're currently at and building from there in regards to physical activity, before you know it, you will be able to accomplish way more than you ever thought you would. So that's the second big pillar in preventing heart disease. The next thing that is extremely important that so many people forget about is sleep. Your body can't heal and recover without adequate sleep. And so getting good quality sleep is important, and sleep hygiene is important. And so that's a whole nother topic for another day, but delving into sleep hygiene so that your body can get the rest it needs and recover is also a preventive measure for heart disease. And then we've talked a little bit about it, but avoiding risky substances. So like the tobacco, reducing alcohol intake. You want to limit that to 1 to 2 drinks a day. If you're male, it's 2. If you're female, it's 1. The excessive alcohol use does have harmful effects to the heart as well. So just being mindful of certain behaviors that can put you at higher risk of heart disease. And then the final thing that's also important for reducing the risk of heart disease is stress management. If you are constantly under extreme stress, your adrenaline system is always surging, which is putting extra work on the heart, on the blood vessels, can increase blood pressure. It's, again, one of those cycles that one thing leads to another, and it can ultimately be devastating. And so really working on stress reduction techniques will go a long ways in preventing heart disease.
Right. Now, I know I've been practicing breathing techniques, which is a whole nother show. I have to have you back on for that. And it works pretty good. I mean, it really reduces your blood pressure. I mean, you can see it instantly if you just clear your mind and do some breathing. We'll talk about that. But it's been a pleasure having you on the show. You have to come back again. Heather, thank you so much for joining me on the show. You're watching the Power Hour right here on Soul TV.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being on here, and I hope your guests enjoy and can take away something from this that helps them on their health journey.
All right, you're watching the Power Hour. I'm your host, DJ Larry. Power Hour. And
Myself.
Mr. Fine Elliott.
And then you start to...
I found out about my husband's infidelity.
Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on there, DJ Larry.
Are aliens real?
Hey, I can't say they're not.
Life is bigger than going to work, paying bills, and repeating the cycle. I mean, it's some more to it.
Catch an all-new Power Hour with DJ Larry Jones at 8:30 p.m. EST on Soul TV.